Welcome back to A Plus Parents and everyone. Today with me, super special guest and with a real niche or niche, depending on how you want to say that word. I think niche is probably the best way that people pronounce that. But Erica Orosco Cruz, she's from California, and she is an early childhood learning expert. That's probably the best way to say it. And we're going to talk a lot today about what she's been doing for over 20 years, working with young people. She's a mom of 4, and she's got a big age range from 2 to 25. She has a grandchild. She is just a delight. So you're going to love hearing from her today. And really what you're going to hear today is some tips, practices, coaching on working with your preschoolers and your early childhood. So it's just super excited to have you here. And Erica has a background where she's been introduced to the Waldorf learning style, which is very, very cool. If you're not familiar with that, we'll have her talk a little bit about that as well. And got to look at my notes because she is what's called a certified RIE, which stands for Resources for Infant Educarers. And I had to ask her about what is an educator, or what's an educator. So we'll have her share a little more about that. But you're going to find today that she's just a wealth of information. Just so excited, Erica, to have you here, and welcome to the show. And anything else you want to share with us about you?
Yes, you had said I have quite the range. Yes, I have a 2-year-old, just turned 2, all the way up to 25-year-old. My 25-year-old has 2 children of his own. He has a daughter who's 10 months, and I have a grandson who's also 3 years. So we did our own thing in in pandemic time, having our little family and community all together. But I'm just so happy to be here. I read your book and I was just like, yes, yes, this, and how can we spread this word? So I'm really happy about the work that you're doing in the world and happy to be here.
Oh, it's so great. And, for me too, and I share this with people, that one of the questions I get asked a lot, because, I focus on the middle school and high school was my primary kind of where my sweet spot is, right? I think teenagers are just odd enough to be interesting, right? And they just kind of keep me going because they're going through all those funny places in their life, right? And it's like they just kind of crack me up. But oftentimes with our younger kids, and especially the preschoolers, you actually work with teaching them to become what you like, a self-directed, independently responsible learner. And I just love that, because oftentimes we do get asked questions and parents are like, well, how do I take this and apply it to my really young kids? And so we're going to have a little bit, have you share a little bit about that as well today too. So, if you started out where our parents, when they listen, and our parents as homeschool families, and I think as parents and any parents when they have young people, I think what they want more than anything is they want to know that their young people can think for themselves, that they can find what they're passionate about and have an amazing life. I mean, it's like, and if we just took those 3 things and had those be what we want for our kids, it'd be one of the few times that people would come together and agree on something, so it's like they're
Totally. Like when you mentioned those, it was just like, oh yeah, yeah, that.
yeah. So if you're going to start, like, you really look at, really facilitating what an independent learner looks like from the beginning. So how do you do that? How do you get started right away from the early beginning? And actually, before we even do that, tell us about Educare. So, because I think that kind of feeds into
Totally.
how you'd
That's
answer that
exactly where I was
question. So
going.
yeah.
That's amazing. So, Dennis, one of the things that I also do is I work with postpartum families. So when they're coming home from the hospital, from day one, you're able to really create this. And Educare was a coined phrase by Magda Gerber, who started the nonprofit that you were talking about, Resources for Infant Educarers, RIE. And she coined the phrase educare because we educate as we care for them. And so for a young infant, that would be, when we are diapering them or getting ready to feed them or getting ready for bedtime, everything where we are, they're codependent still on us. We are talking about what we're doing to their body. I wouldn't go up to you and grab a tissue and wipe your nose if were ready to sneeze or something. But so often parents will do that to their children. Like, I know what's best for you, so I'm just going to go and do it without talking about it to the children. And so even with a young infant, it would be, I'm going to lay you down. I'm going to get your diaper ready. Oh, I see that this one's soiled. Okay, I'm going to wipe your bum. Whatever it is, we are educating them So these phrases, which, for a newborn might be like Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 wah. But if we are consistent with the words diaper and wipe and I'm going to pick you up now, the children start to, have those words. Oh, that's what she means when she's, telling me pick me up and then she picks me up. They start to connect the words to what the meaning is. And so even from day one, we could be doing this. And so part of the RIE work was also creating a space where the children have independent play. And so, for young children, it would be independent play would be, them guiding their own play without the interruption or stimulus of adults. And so we create time where they can have time on their own to play, even a young child. I remember, my 14-year-old would wake up in the morning. I'd get him dressed, telling him, you're going to get dressed and I'm going to go and take you to your play space. And so for that time, it was in our living room and other people were asleep. And I would then lay him in his play area. And then I would go to the kitchen. I might be emptying the dishwasher. I might be sitting down and reading the newspaper. I might be having a cup of tea. But he would play independently, anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And then he would roll over, do his little army crawl over to the kitchen area where I was. And then I would know that that was time when it was time for breakfast. Okay, he's getting hungry. He's not playful as much. And then it would be breakfast time. So it's pretty mind blowing to people that, this is possible even for young children. But it is totally possible.
Wow, that's amazing. And so he actually communicates with you when he's letting you know what he wants, as opposed to you just deciding what he wants when he wants it.
Yes, exactly. And then even, postpartum, if you could remember when the babies, were young and, coming home and, if the children cry, we are like, oh, they're hungry, because we might be hungry or we're just wanting them to get back to sleep. So we'll try and feed them, but they're actually communicating to us. So it could be, the light was too bright. It could be the temperature was too cold. It could be a variety of things. So we're really investigating, being curious about it, so then we could really find out what the need is before we assume what it is.
Wow. So you've been in this field and doing this work for 20 years,
Uh,
and you have a center, you're probably more than 20 years, but you've
yeah,
been working with your center for over 20 years
yeah,
that you work with young people there. So tell us a little bit about, because how does this happen? Like, how do you become an expert in this field? So how were you raised as you were growing up?
yeah. Very differently, very differently. I traditional Hispanic family in Los Angeles. My parents both worked. I had a grandmother who was a primary caregiver for me for my first few years. Um, and then when I was 3, she was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm.
And I went into childcare, and by the time I was 4, I lost her. And so being in group care, through the years, would go to school, but then had daycare after. It was such a variety of, loving, attentive care to not attentive and not loving. And so as I grew up and really because my parents were working, I really kind of got to see what the variety of care was and the variety of attention, and really was able to kind of make some decisions about education. Of like, I told my parents, I think at 7th grade, like, I need a private school, I need some more form. There was not enough form socially in the public school setting, and so went into private school. um, During my high school years, I would go to the public school for summer courses that I didn't want to take with certain nuns, so I would go and do that.
Right.
And then was really just interested in learning. I had some really great experiences with learning, and so even at 15, I was doing volunteer work at daycares, and again, seeing the gamut of attentive care, non-attentive care, and attentive care not meaning you're with them 100%, but attentive care is you can be at a distance and really watch their learning and really see them explore rather than being directed to do certain things. And so when I came across, the Waldorf philosophy, which was really about free play, for the first, 6 years, I was like, wow, this is so different than what's mainstream, where the children got to have the experience of free play. There was activities that were offered, like artistic activities and cooking activities and gardening activities, but it was all an invitation. So the children could participate if they wanted to, and they didn't have to participate if they didn't want to. And so I really saw that, after being in the field for 10 years, and was like, this is it. This is where it's not directed. Children are invited to participate if they want to. And this is what we use in our program here at Homeschool Garden, here in Los Angeles.
Wow. What have you noticed with, with some of the young people you get to work with, right? Do you have any kind of just like things that you've seen, or you're just like kind of those aha things where you see a young person do something, you say, that's why we do this.
Yes, and I think it'll be things that you'll see as well working with homeschoolers, is that when you have a variety of ages, we have the youngest is my granddaughter who's 10 months, and we go up to 6 years. When you have a variety of ages, you get to see the interactions that they have with each other, and it's not something typical. You see, older children that will ask help of a younger child, oh, can you, move this piece over here, or can you help? There's more community, there's more communication. I remember my son, who was 5, the oldest at the time, we went to a not back to school camping trip. It was for homeschoolers, and there was, multiple age of children playing, and an older child, said, invite him into the group play. I think they were playing football, and invited him into it. And he was like, oh my God, they're inviting me. Like, he's so much older, but, I'm invited into the play. They don't have these ideas, like, which is mainstream, you stay with your own age group. Your recess is almost with the same age group as well. I'm 46. I'm not hanging out with 46-year-old. There's a variety of people that I have as friends and who I like to hang out with. And so here in the program, there is that, mutual understanding and empathy and respect for each other, even with the variety of ages. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I see.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's so, for me too, it's like, as I get older, it's like, I still like being, I love being around young people, because it's like, it's my whole world is been in education, but it keeps me young, and I do have some friends that are in my, yeah, I have some friends in my age group, but oftentimes the ones where I kind of connect with and bond with, they're oftentimes a little younger than I am. So it kind of makes it kind of fun. Well, all right. So, as you're sharing this, right, there, people are like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing, right? Are there challenges that you see that, that parents might bump up against when they're trying to look at, how do I raise my kids as independent learners?
Challenges. I think of it as a challenge, yes, but I think it serves our children so much more, is that they get to speak their mind. They get to express themselves. It may not be beautiful. So, for a young child, it might be, that they have to wash their hands before their meal, and they're like, I want to just eat. I'm hungry. Maybe it passed their, mealtime, and they're agitated. And it's, I hear you. You're not wanting to wash your hands. But before we sit down to eat, we are going to wash our hands. So they're allowed to have their emotions. You reflect that and observe it, and you still set the boundary, and we're still going to wash hands. And so that space, and that comes from the RIE work of really allowing them to express themselves, and still hold the boundary. There's times where the children are struggling over a toy. They both want to be in the truck, or they want to push the truck, or they'll pull the wagon, and there's several children that want to do that at the same time. I hear you. You're both wanting to pull on the wagon. I see your friends are waiting in the wagon. Yep. And so really just what we call sports casting, like if you're watching a football game, so and so has the ball, he takes it down, whatever it is, we're sports casting to the children, so that this awareness, because they're so focused on, I want to pull the wagon, that they are not aware that, oh, someone else might have the same feeling. Someone else might be wanting to do that too. And so sports casting, you're both wanting to pull it. there's like, oh, there's an awareness of like somebody else wanting to do it. The challenge, I think, with the multi-age is that we have some children that are super verbal and some that are not. But we have that out in the world too, where, people that are more willing to express themselves and some that are more reserved. So it's a great opportunity for children to be in this experience of learning about other people, having the same desires, and, having to deal with that at the same time.
Hmm. It's interesting because, as you say that, like, there's the challenge that I hear is there's the challenge of, like, there's the, young people having permission to move through those spaces, and that they are upset. And sometimes to be, the great thing about especially little kids is, like, they're upset, they cry, and they're done, and it's over. It's just like, it's just done. Like, as adults, we get upset, we cry, and it's not over, right? It's like, we're going to hold on to it. And we're going to, it's like, that's going to take us through the next week. We're going to be upset all week long, right? But little
Totally.
guys are like, they're done. It's like, okay, yeah, I was upset. Now I'm not anymore. And okay, oh, you're my best friend. You're always my best friend. And they get right back to where they were.
Yeah.
So it for me, it seems like like the challenge, there's the challenge of giving permission to the kids to go through that. But I think the challenge for adults is the patience to practice that,
Yeah.
because that's not typically, we don't have that as a skill set. Like, we weren't necessarily raised that way ourselves, or it's there is that time. It's like, when it's time, you want, especially like kids are tired at night, right? And you're like, you're having them go to bed because you're tired, not because they're tired, right? So it's, it's the practice of all that. I could definitely see where, part of the challenge is for parents to give themselves permission to have it be a little bumpy. Like, it may not go so well the first time. Have you noticed that too with parents? Like, when they're first when they're first practicing, that it's they probably bump up against themselves more than what the young person's going through. What do you share with a parent when they're dealing with their own frustration about their impatience of having something work and giving it more time?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do allow myself some grace, that, dinner wasn't, served on, the time that I like it to serve. It took a little longer, or, I wanted to answer this email or talk with somebody, but my child was like needing my attention. So I do allow myself grace so that I'm able to allow grace from my child of, it doesn't look pretty, they're like having a full on tantrum, but because I've allowed myself grace, I'm able to allow my child grace in that way.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. So you start with yourself, and if you can give yourself space, you can have space for. I love that. That's really, really great. So if you came up with like three things that where parents could start today, like right now, to grow independent learners, what would be those three things?
Well, definitely the first thing would be, let them know what you're going to do before you do it. So it would be, say they're working on something, and they're building something with their blocks, I want to let you know that we're going to be leaving to grandma and grandpa's as soon as I get my shoes on. So you go and pack the car, get everything ready. Now you're changing into like the shoes you're going to wear. And then you're reminding them, okay, I'm putting on my shoes. It's going to be time to go. So that it gives them awareness of, okay, there's something that's going to happen, a transition that's coming up. Definitely, you want to do that also while you're caring for them, like I shared with you about the diaper change, so that they become aware of this body that's going to be their vessel for a long, long time, so that they have awareness of that as well. Second thing would be, in order to really have that independent learner, they also need to have that time with you. So, Magda, again, the founder of RAI, I go back to her work as a foundation of, it's not the quantity of time that you're spending with your children, it's actually the quality of time that you're spending with your children. So I remember, my children, I was getting dinner ready, I was washing some dishes, and they, would ask me around this 5 o'clock hour when you're trying to get everything done, come on, can you play with us? And I'd be, no, I got dinner or I got dishes going. And when I heard my middle son, one of my middle sons was, he said, Mom, you always say that. And so for me, that's a red flag. You know, I always say that. Okay, tune into what am I always saying? I'm always saying I can't play. Okay, got dinner going. The dishes will be here forever. They will come. They will be there. They're not going to disappear. So I went and I put a timer on the kitchen timer so that I can come back and check dinner. And I went outside and I played with my boys. They were, 5 and 8 at the time, and it was, basketball, hoop over the garage, and no phone, no other distractions. I played and I played, in it, it played hard with them. And then I heard the timer go off. I said, okay, it's time for me to go and check on dinner. And they were like, thanks, mom. Thanks for playing with us. And it was 10 minutes. But for them, it was full attention for those 10 minutes. It felt like an hour to them. So it doesn't have to be a huge quantity of time. It's actually the quality of time that you're spending with your children. So if I'm wanting to, build this independent play, like I shared with my young infant, he would go and play and then would army crawl over to the kitchen area. He would need to know that there was time that we were together that would create his ability to play independently. So if you have a child who only can play for 10 minutes at a time, or else they go, mommy, look, or mommy, come, or, come and get involved in this kind of thing, you want to be able to build that. So if you've got 10 minutes, do it when they've been fed and they've slept, and so they're at their optimum to play on their own without the interruption of you coming and joining them in that
Wow.
way.
That's awesome. So you want to let them know what's going on, right? And I love that, because what's interesting about, an independent learner is that you still have to be there. You still have to participate. So there is still you having that time to be with them. So that's just awesome. And so, if you look at these young people that are being raised this way, right? What do you notice that's different about them as maybe somebody that's not raised that way?
I see just in their body, they're so much more confident. So, they say goodbye to mom and dad at the gate, and they're walking in and their chest is almost like pumped, like, okay, what am I going to do today? Because, we have digging area and gardening and art activity going on, and, friends running around and things like that. And they come in like, what will my choice be today? So much confidence in themselves. Also, because we're not saying, okay, it's time to do this, or it's time to do this, or it's time to do that. They actually take the time of like, what do I want to do? And so they will go and choose their play, or they'll see their friend and see what they're joining and play in that way. So there's this choice that, some kids who have not been in our program, let's say they came later and they're maybe 4 years old, they might be waiting for a direction of, do I sit down? Do I go over here? And that sort. And so we remind them of like, these are the opportunities that you get to do: climbing structure, the swings, the animals that we have, just reminding them that they have that choice. And quite quickly, you start to hear the language that we use with the children, like when we're setting boundaries, like, I see that you're both wanting to play with that. You'll see the older children actually, oh, I see you're reaching for so and so's block, because they know that that creates something, that presence. And so they start to imitate, how they would handle a boundary. So you see children who are able to handle their own personal boundaries, but also set boundaries for others in that way.
Wow. Right. What a skill, right? So as you're sharing that, I'm like, I know people, that's something that adults struggle with, is how do you create boundaries for themselves and their own personal boundaries? So what a great way to have it be something that's just ingrained in you as a young person, that's just normal and natural to you. That's so great. Definitely leads to confidence. There's no doubt. Get my own chest puffed out there and off we go. So Erica, you have your own podcast. And do you do workshops, or do you have things where, like, if people want to get more information? So we want to definitely find out how to get, and we'll put this in the show notes too, but let's start with your podcast. Cause I know you do have, I think you do have a podcast that you do already, right? Or you don't?
I don't have a, yes.
There's, okay. I think you need to start one. That's so there we go. This will be the beginning of that. But if people want to get in touch with you, or do you have any, websites and Facebook groups and all those kinds of things, or any workshops or anything you do like that, how do people connect with you?
Yes, definitely. We have our website, which is homeschoolgardensite.com, site.com. And you can find information about our programs, our online classes. We have online classes for parents in parent coaching. People bring what's up for them. We have different topics. And then we have a monthly parent workshop. So you can just drop in once a month and join us. And we just recorded one on Saturday about the potential of play and all the learning that can happen during that time. And I would like to gift that to your listeners because I think
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So it's Homeschool Garden. Is there an S on the end or no?
no
Homeschool?
S.
Okay.
Homeschool
So
Garden.
Homeschool Garden site, site.com.
Yes.
And then people can find out more about you and link up to the different workshops you have. And that's so great that you have online programs for them as well. So that's exciting.
Yes.
Very, very cool. All right. Well, I think we're going to need to do this again.
Oh,
But then the next time you can have me be a guest on your podcast. How about that? We'll get you going.
That sounds like a great challenge. All right.
Really good. Well, Erica, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know our listeners and families and even our young people just hearing, they're in a couple of places. Like one is like they're being reinforced about things that they're already doing. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm on the right track and I'm going to keep doing this and really striving for that independent learner. And then the other is I think people can hear some tips and ideas and just know it's okay to explore. And in exploring, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't, but just giving you grace. I love that word. I'm gonna play with that word today. That'll be my word of the day. Just giving yourself grace to be where you are. So just love that. So this is great. And thanks again for making your day work and your own schedule work to get here and be here. It was just great to meet you and to be able to have you come and be on here. And for everybody listening in, thanks again for tuning into A+ Parents, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.